thank you for taking the time to speak to me. Um, because what you do goes beyond just supporting others.
Hmm.
But like I say, so a lot of people think that they think that the parents of children with cancer focus solely around fundraising. And whilst that is an aspect of it, your work goes so much deeper than that. It really does. It goes towards politics, structure, support, so you do the supporting of the families, advocating for them, and trying to push towards better recognition politically
Right.
because childhood cancer just isn't funded. But what I want to ask you is that do you still see, I know I do, but do you still see some misunderstandings from the wider world looking in?
Yeah, the misunderstandings stem from one very important word that is one that you'll never hear me say within this community, which is rare, and that's the issue. Is
Mm,
that we're continued to be kind of swarmed with that everybody says, well, it's rare and it's not that big of a deal, and what that does is that shuts off a lot of the world from caring,
yeah.
because they feel like they don't have to. They feel like, well, it must be under control. It must not be that big of a deal.
Mm,
And we have very specific certain commercials that are on that make it look like it's under control, that make it look like it's really almost an exciting time to be in the hospital. And the realities of it are that if we actually showed what a commercial of a real life family going through this,
yeah.
you everybody would turn the TV off because you would just be mortified. And that's the issue, is that far too many people just believe what they're fed, and that is that it's a problem that is under control.
Mm,
Rare makes you think, okay, we don't have to focus that much on it because
yeah.
there's really no need. One specific stat will be that when our daughter was diagnosed in 2020, the big number was 43 kids a day are diagnosed. Well, now that number is 47, and so that itself should push for more people to realize that there's something wrong here. It's not getting better. If anything, it's getting worse, and it's because I think we're pushed into that false sense of security that everything's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you said 43, I thought immediately that's 43 families where everything just stops.
Yeah.
I liken it to almost like a shipwreck. You're sailing quite happily across the sea, and all of a sudden, that's it. The ship goes down, and you're all furiously paddling for a shore that you may never reach. And because you're far out to sea, they say, "Oh, it's only a couple of families. It's only a couple of children," and it's not. It's the entire family unit. It
Mhm.
changes everything, and it's
Yeah.
just by. And then 47. I think that number should be
Yeah.
zero. No one should have to go through it. I can't believe that someone in England can have a conversation with someone in Wisconsin and we still haven't found a way
Right.
to put this in the history books.
Yeah. I think that I'm absolutely, I can say that I'm guilty of going through life prior to any type of diagnosis like this, not understanding how prevalent the problem is.
Mm,
Absolutely guilty of going to a hospital at some point in my adult life before all of this, not realizing that several floors above me there are children fighting for their life, and we don't hear
yeah,
about it. Nobody talks about it. It's almost a taboo topic. It's a taboo subject that
yeah,
if you turn it off and you walk away, then it's not happening to you. But the very simplest way that I can put it is that my wife and I were not cancer parents until the day we were.
yeah,
We had no idea that this is the path that we were headed down with the symptoms and things like that. No
yeah,
reason to believe that we would be here today.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could not resonate with that anymore. It just shouldn't happen. It's not on your, like you say, it's not on your radar until it is. And then your concept of safety, your concept of time, your concept of identity. Your identity is always in some kind of constant state of flux, but it just it's fast tracks it. You're constantly waiting for that wrecking ball to swing again. There's just no, you don't take health for granted, you don't take time for granted, and you don't take, you can only focus on the present.
Yeah.
You have to find little wins that other people don't see as wins are wins to us because
Yep.
sometimes that's all we've got.
Yep.
And the fact that the world can look away just really, well, that's why we're both here.
Yeah, there's just no, it's just very easy to, it's very easy to turn the channel, for the lack of a better way to put it. It's very
Yeah.
easy to donate your money to large organizations connected to childhood cancer without ever researching what the money does. It's very easy to say, well, yeah, of course I support kids being healthy and getting taken care of and all of that kind of stuff,
Mm,
but you're not proving that to me. I say all the time that you can give me any politician across the board, and I promise you that wherever they are in their political career right now, at some point they mentioned taking care of kids in their campaign. Absolutely, I can guarantee it. You just give me the one and
mm,
I'll find it. But that's not proven now. It's
mm.
it's just to get you where you need to be, and then you're left behind. And as much as we scream and yell at the top of our lungs, it just seems like we're forever forgotten and overshadowed by everything in the world that's going on. And it's very easy to blame one person or one party or one group or whatever for what's happening, but
Mm.
nobody wants to really take responsibility for the decades and decades prior to all of that, of what exactly was happening. What
Mm.
exactly were you doing to make this a better situation for our kids? And without our kids making it into adulthood, we literally have no future. No matter where we are on this planet,
Yeah,
we have no future.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that's the other thing that you work really hard for. You work tirelessly for it. And I, being on this particular side of the fence, I can see why. Less toxic, more effective treatments would, if you can't eradicate cancer completely, that should be something that you're working towards. Because having a my son's 16 and the only option is surgical removal. So he's a full left leg amputee. He had recently come out of surgery because part of his kidneys had to be removed. Slowly but surely, it's like watching a hostile takeover. It's just slowly taking over my child. And surgical removal in 2026 is the only option, and we are running out of time. That
Mhm.
makes me angry because that shouldn't be the case. And yet, because children are the future, and during the day, I teach because I want to be able to help leave the world in a better place than the condition I found it in. And I believe that teaching is probably, other than this, is one of the better ways of doing it because children are the future.
Mhm.
Taking care of adult society, yes, it's a responsibility, but we all know that we've got a limited amount of time, and I would much rather it be me than my son. And I think every parent goes to bed praying that it's them, knowing they're going to wake up and it's not a wish that could be or a prayer that's going to be granted. And it's just better, less toxic treatments has got to be a must, not a tick box on a political campaign to get you in office, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I 100% agree. I think that, we haven't had any breakthrough developments in drugs and treatments for our kids in decades. I mean, there are things that kind of pop out here and there that are going through clinical trials and studies and stuff like that. But, the reality of it is that, all of the people that we're connected to in this community, you talk about the side effects that these children have from these drugs. And I was actually just creating some things to post on social media this morning. And it goes back to, one particular drug would put our daughter in an absolute locked in the box situation for 12 hours. She couldn't communicate, she couldn't move, she had no idea what was going on. And 12 hours later, she would wake up and had no idea what had happened, which thank God she didn't remember it. But
Yeah, but
then they tried to combat it with another drug, which was called methylene blue. And that gave her the most incredible tremors and twitches that she literally would sit up in bed, completely involuntary. So I would have to sleep on the floor, kneeling with my arm over her because I thought she was going to fall out of bed.
Mm.
And the common ones that we all know: your hair falls out, you lose your hearing, children can become infertile. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Women won't be able to have babies, and men won't be able to create them unless they freeze, their
yeah.
eggs and all that kind of stuff. And
My son's had
and
that treatment, and yeah, it's awful. Just the
yeah, and
price.
and I remember them bringing that up. And our daughter, she at that point she was very much, even at 6, 7, 8 years old, took control of what was happening to her.
Mm.
And they asked us, "Do you want us to freeze her eggs because she's most likely not going to be able to have children of her own later in life?" And we decided not to because we didn't want to put her through it. But she also was like, "Well, that's okay. I'll just adopt." That was her mindset, and that was her attitude. And that's what all of these kids, they really take control and they understand so much more than they're given credit for.
Yeah.
And, I think that's where a lot of our motivation comes from, is to know that if we just sat down for 1 minute, for
Mm.
5 minutes out of your life and talk to one of these kids, it
Yeah.
will change your perspective on life 100%.
I mean, I wish I could offer the rest of the world the perspective that having cancer in the family gives you without the cancer, because I genuinely believe the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
My 16-year-old acts as the buffer. He gets to a point and he says, I am not passing that on to my family. Doesn't He knows he's incurable. He knows time's running out and he refuses to pass that on to us. And that means that he carries the reason why people look the other way, and that natural fear of mortality. He carries that and
Yeah.
he owns it and he does it with dignity. And I think every child looks death square in the face and just doesn't. It's natural to flinch, but they don't. And they do it with they're so humble and they do it with dignity. And, there's only so much pride you can keep intact with a cancer battle. But that's what the world doesn't see. But they shouldn't have to be paying the price that they are because money's going elsewhere.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's really powerful what you're doing, so you're trying to help with access to care. And I know that you do support packages for families as well. I mean, the entire family is thrust into complete, not, yeah, chaos. You don't know which way's up. And
Mhm.
that direction's constantly changing. And it's just people find it more comfortable to look in the other direction. Whereas, like you say, their entire worldview would change if they sat with a child with cancer for 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, this is a family diagnosis, 100%.
Yeah.
Going through everything, getting up until, when she was finally diagnosed, it was hell. And it was, to the point where my wife felt like doctors, she was going to different ERs and things like that, trying to find out what the heck's going on.
Mm.
And she thought she was being watched and monitored, almost to the point where it's like, you can't care for your kid without being made to feel like you're doing something wrong. And
Yeah.
as parents, and especially as moms, when something's wrong with your
Yeah.
child,
Yeah.
and somebody told me one time, you have to trust your mama gut. And that's a real thing. And the fact that it's so hard to get the care and the treatments that these kids need at a more expedient
Yeah.
way, it's crazy, because how much time is lost trying to find the diagnosis and then getting the treatments and all of that, because you're made to believe that there's something else wrong. And my wife will say, it's you're chasing horses instead of zebras. And that's the problem, is that you're not looking for what it could be versus how many other things you could just play it off as.
Mm.
We went for months and months and months being told that it was constipation. That was it.
Mm.
And, all of her symptoms would line up with that. But then, when one test proves something else, well, then all the symptoms line up for brain cancer. And it's like,
Mm.
yeah, we all, I tell people a lot, and we did it the same thing. We're guilty of it. Don't be a Google doctor, but it's part of us. We have to know, we have to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. But To your point as well, I just want to say that, yeah, the innocence that these children have,
Mm,
and the way they handle things,
mm,
and the way that they care about us and what's
mm.
going to happen to us
Yeah,
when it's a point where it's unfortunate and it's terminal, there's nothing more that we can do. We know that the time is limited, but they're caring. How are you guys going to be when I'm gone? How are you going to be? I'm
mm,
going to be okay. How are you going to be?
yeah,
That's what we're missing in this world right now. From
yeah,
border to border, that's what we're missing, is that innocence, that caring for other people, that, it's the oxygen mask there, there, you take care of yourself, but make sure that you're good. And then you take care of everybody else, and they take care of us. They
yeah,
give us that guidance, whether they're here, whether they're in heaven, they're making sure that we're on the right path. That's what we're missing. I wish to the heavens that we had more of that injected in the world right now. And
yeah,
it could just, why do we have to be at arms all the time?
yeah. I think that's the other thing. I always keep one ear on the news because you never know, but I don't pay it as much attention because, in my opinion, I just don't want to give. I don't have time or energy to watch it because I have far more important things going on. I could be watching the news and seeing what's going on, or I could be paying attention to him, and we could be sitting as a family unit. We know that the elephant sits in the room, and I kind of think that we've learnt to live with the elephant. We make sure that we make fun of it sometimes, but I try not to let it drive. I think that's the thing. Being afraid of knowing what's coming, but just don't let the fear drive. It just changes your perspective and you don't sweat the small stuff as much. I
Right.
think if there were children with cancer actually in office, which would be amazing, by the way,
Mm.
um, I just don't think there would be as many arguments because they just wouldn't sweat it. They can see the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, I think, is that watching how they live life,
Mm,
watching how they get it to the fullest now. It's
yeah.
because none of that stuff matters to them. Party lines and conflicts and arguments and road rage, for that matter. None of that stuff matters to them. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
and that's what I try to channel every single day, in that sense, is that, ever since our daughter's diagnosis, and that was in 2020, I've never called in sick for a day of work since then. It takes a lot to put me on the ground, because I look back and say, what do I have to complain about?
mm,
Everything I watched her go through, and her and families and friends and stuff, what do we really have to complain about? But they
mm,
just offer that incredible perspective to us. And yeah, I mean, I literally just did a podcast episode a week ago, and one of my statements was, we need to have a full reset of our Congress with just parents, just
mm.
moms and dads that have been through the worst things in their lives, and let them give you a perspective on what's really important in life right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that almost brings me to my next question. So not every parent of a child with cancer does what we're doing and starts a podcast and tries to get messages out there. What made you what made you decide to go out there and try to not campaign is the wrong word for it, but fight for better treatments and better funding and more realistic recognition for children and their families that are going through it? What sparked that for you?
So it's, going through all of this, with our daughter. Obviously, we started a nonprofit. We started it with her. And that was always something that she loved to be a part of and do.
Mm,
And when she passed, we decided to carry it on as, her legacy, and to keep it strong. But I knew from the minute that she took her last breath that we had to do something. We cannot sit back and allow more families to feel what we just felt. Going out, and sitting on our front porch as our daughter is driven away to the funeral home. And I looked at my wife and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." I said,
mm,
"Everybody on this street is still sleeping. They have no idea what just happened. No idea, what is going on 2 houses away from them." And at like that moment, I knew we have to be able to do better for our kids. There's got to be something that we missed. There's got to be something that we can provide for them. And that became the drive with everything that we do. And just making sure that her name is never forgotten. That is the biggest thing to me, that people know who she is, that know what she went through, and that her legacy lives on in the way that she lived, which is always helping and wanting other people to be happy. That was the biggest thing for me. I never wanted that to go away. Um,
Mm.
and so that's the biggest driving factor, and in making sure that there's a future out there for these kids. I mean, we've come to peace with the fact that we couldn't save her, but there's so many other kids out there that could be saved just by the lived experience that we've been through, and being able to give back in that manner. And this is also, I guess, what you would call my therapy to do this.
Yeah.
Never had formal therapy before. I think this is, talking about it, being an outlet for other people. I say all the time that my phone number is pretty public. If anybody needs to contact me and they just want to vent, then, sometimes that's all you need. That's all part of this, is just being, as much of a use to other people, based on what we've gone through, that, I know that she lives on through everything that we do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So that's why I initially, everything else has kind of snowballed after it, but it started with writing a book that parents can flick through and get to, oh, well, we're in chemo, and you can read on, based on my experience, this is what we went through, this is what helped, this is what you need to watch out for. And I think it's that it is so isolating. It is so lonely. And although people within the cancer community are almost like the Avengers, somebody says Avengers assemble, I need help, and we all come out of the woodwork, but it still doesn't stop the silence sometimes. And I remember writing it and thinking, at least now he will live forever in the pages of the book. And it's just, yeah, I know one day I'm going to have to, but he will, his influence and everything he lived for will still be there and in everything I do after that. Because one thing that cancer can take a lot of things, but it won't take how much I love him and he loves me. And that it can't have that. I'm still his mum. He's still my son. Doesn't matter where he is,
Yeah.
And I totally get that.
Yep. No,
And
that's 100%.
what frustrates me is the what we have to carry as parents of children with cancer, and how society is still emotionally uncomfortable or lack the emotional capacity to hold what we're carrying. Are you finding that your side of the fence? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What we go through on a daily basis, and what we go through, from diagnosis to treatments to grief and everything that we feel. I mean, I think it goes all the way back to the beginning, where people don't think that it's a big problem, and also they just don't have the ability to understand. And people ask, how do you do it every day, right? I'm sure that you've heard it. Or
Yeah.
how are you so strong? And
Mm,
we're not, right? We weren't given a choice in all of this. And
yeah.
it's adaptability. We figure out how to live, we figure out how to get through it.
Mm,
We've got a new normal life that we have to navigate.
mm,
And yeah, I think that a lot of people just don't have the understanding of what it takes to get through this. And the reality of it is, I don't want you to. I don't want
yeah.
you to know. That's, I always tell that to people. Like, I want you to understand our story, but I don't want you to understand how we feel, because that means you're also going through it, and we're trying
Mm,
to eliminate, that we're trying to eliminate other people having to feel this feeling. So, I want more people to listen to us. I want more people to be in this space. And
mm,
I want more people that are not personally connected to be in this space, because I think we've got a lot to offer the world. And like I said, without these kids moving forward in life, nobody has a future. It doesn't matter what you believe in. We're
yeah.
all we're done at this point. And that should matter to everybody. That should
Yeah.
resonate, no matter what side of the aisle, whatever you support, whatever your religion, color, creed, whatever. None of that stuff matters. Cancer
Mm,
doesn't discriminate. Then why is the world discriminating by almost leaving us out of the conversation? That's a big thing that I have a big issue with, and I get very heated over that kind of stuff, because when I see, our own, politics going haywire, and I see people arguing over stuff that I'm looking at, why is that important? Why
Mm,
does that matter for anybody? But yet you've got kids that are trying to make it, trying to get you to listen, trying to get you to hear them, and nothing. I don't
mm,
want your name on a bill if you don't understand why your name's there. I don't want you reaching out and supporting what we're doing unless you understand why you're supporting what we're doing. And that's why we've always tried to be accessible, and we want people to learn. This is supposed to be educational.
mm. Absolutely, because that is something that throughout my conversations on here, I am finding patterns in terms of wider society and how we adapt to them. We almost we act as an emotional thermostat. And I think until I started seeing the pattern, I didn't realize that I did it. But you can walk into a room and you can assess quite quickly who is capable of holding what you're carrying and who's not. And you will know how to regulate the room emotionally, how to hold back what you're carrying, who to give it to, and that's a skill. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill that can potentially be taught. And if we can help others learn how to stay, because no one has ever remembered someone for the perfect sentence, but they'll remember how they made them feel when they stayed. And that's almost the muscle that I'm working on trying to build, so that the more people that are comfortable with staying, the more it can filter into political change and funding. Because my mind just boggles. Not only does my mind boggle at the fact that you can go medically bankrupt trying to stay alive or trying to keep your child alive, which is not something that we should have to do. But because people, oh, it's just children, it doesn't happen very often. Okay, well, we'll tell that to us then, because it's happened to us and it sucks.
Yeah.
It's just because you're turning a blind eye to it doesn't mean it's not happening. And the more you do that, nothing's going to change. So that
Yeah.
hopefully is my aim. But um, what conversations with lawmakers and politics wise, what conversations are still not happening that need to desperately.
There The problem is that, at least for us here, the problem is that this topic and children in general are pawns. And that is the biggest issue, is that we're only in the news, and our kids are only in this community is only in the news, and we have been in the last couple of years a few times, because it's convenient, and it's clicks and it's views, and it can draw hate, or whatever you want to call it, to the other side. And that's the issue, is that there's a line down the middle. These conversations that we try to have, and legislation we've tried to bring up several times here, and it's failed because of party lines, because you can't get enough people on board to want to support what you're doing, because it could mean tax breaks for big corporations, or it could be money away from the state, or something along those lines. And to me, none of that matters if you don't have a future to actually fund the state that you're trying to protect from these tax breaks. And I've always tried to understand that. And that's the conversations just are not going past initial, hey, how you doing? I've got this legislation I think would make sense, or these ideas. Let's talk about it. And then you never hear it. Um, and that's part of the problem. It's that nobody's getting past those initial walk in the door spots, and the conversations we need to have, unfortunately. And I don't like to do this, because it, to me, it's harsh, but it's a reality. The conversations need to start with every single politician's office you walk into, no matter where you go, has got pictures of their children on their desk or on their wall. And the
Yeah,
conversation, unfortunately, has to start with, any one of those children could be stricken with this today. And that's not a
yeah,
threat. That's a statistical reality that
yeah,
we're all facing. And then what? Then would you care? then would it make sense to put it on the House floor, the Senate floor? Then it would it make sense for you um, to talk about it, to let us into your office. This doesn't have to be, some political rally. This just has to be you as a person that happens to be in a spot, in a position of power, listening to a family that is going through real problems and real crisis that is facing a lot of people. But the same, you know, whatever the government hurdle that we're trying to get over is that you've been telling us for years and everybody for years that this isn't a big issue. um, you know, giving giving us 4% of your entire funding situation, which some sources will say it's 8% now, but even still, that's terrible. That's
Mm,
horrible. That's
mm,
8 cents of every dollar you're going to give to kids. But a lot of research that goes into adult cancers comes from findings that they do when they're researching pediatrics. So we're essentially doing the work of both and getting leftover funding. And it's something that I'll never understand and can never really truly be explained to me as to why that happens,
mm,
um, without blaming. And I don't play. You'll never see it anywhere in my social media. Anyway, I don't play left or right politics. I don't play into all of it because to me, they're all failing us. They're all
yeah.
failing our kids. They're failing our families, and they're failing us across the board. In foreign relations and stuff. I think that we're left out of the conversations, and there's other countries that are figuring these things out, or they've got discoveries, they have ideas, treatments, therapies, and we're not utilizing it because we're fighting all the time.
Yeah.
And
It's
again, the only
everybody's responsibility. Yeah. It
yeah,
is everybody's responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I did want to say, I know we're running out of time, but I did want to say you've got some big things coming up this month, haven't you? I know I saw something about your birthday that I'm going to be donating to, something about tape and a tree.
Yeah, I did. So we do a lot of weird things on social media to raise money, and it's honestly, I was thinking about it the other day, and people always ask, why do you do these things? And it's because it makes people laugh, and that's what our community is all about. We can support each other, but not every conversation has to be about cancer. And that's the beautiful thing. And all of these people that come and support us, we make them laugh. It takes their mind off of things. A lot of families that we connect with are still having their children going through stuff, and
Mm.
it takes their mind away from it. So yeah, a couple weeks ago, I taped my sister to a tree. I feel like she deserved it and needed. uh, and so we had a lot of people that said that, you know what, you need to do it too. And I said, okay, you know what, my birthday's coming up. We'll do it as a celebration. All I want is for you to come in and support what we're doing.
Mhm.
If that means that I have to make a fool of myself, then that's fine because it's for the betterment of our community. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'm 100% for it. We have our yearly event comes up in August, so everything that we raise right now is going towards that event. And hopefully we're creating an entirely new program here in Wisconsin. Hopefully that we can also, you know, spread throughout the rest of the country and wherever, that will allow children survivors of pediatric cancer to be able to have a new normal coming back into society, to be able to be around people that understand them, to get back into fitness and to get back into family things that a lot of times you can't do when you're going through these treatments. You're split up in the hospital, or you're quarantined, you can't leave the
Mm,
house, and this allows you to kind of get back into a new normal.
mm.
Also giving a space to grieving parents and families, because I think it's so important for them to have a
Yeah.
space to feel included. So all that money that we raise through up until then, and our event is going towards that, and we hope that we can make a pretty good donation to start that.
Mm.
And again, if it everything we do up until then makes other people laugh at our
Yeah.
expense, then we're all for it.
Well, laughter is an emotional pressure release valve, I find. I laugh more in hospital waiting for him to, so he had a biopsy a couple of weeks ago, which resulted in the kidney. We were there for 12 hours and I thought I was going to get thrown out because it just like the valve just went psh, and I was laughing. Thank you so much for coming on. Um, and if there is anything else that I can do to help you and your goals, because your goals are our goals, we all want the same thing, then all you'll need to do is just let me know.
I will do that. Thank you.
So platforms supporting platforms. Um, But other than that, thank you for everything that you do for children with cancer, because it is a dark, lonely world for the children and for the parents. And they do it with such dignity. And I think if we get just one politician to listen, that is a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
100%. 100%.